Oh, let me tell you something. Busting makes me feel good.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Blockbusting, the podcast where we love to hate the movies. I'm your host, Jay Light. Joining me today, digitally, my friend Rena Hundert.
Woo!
What up, Rena?
Digital.
Yeah. Oh, you're in the computer.
I'm in the Matrix.
You're motion blurred.
I'm starring in the Matrix.
You are. What was the name of the gal in the Matrix? Trinity. No,
I don't
the
know.
actress who played her. What was her name?
Oh, I'm bad with names.
I am too. You're Morpheus now.
I'm Morpheus. He was my favorite character in the Matrix, so
He's great.
yeah, he's the best.
That Carrie-Anne Moss. Man, what happened to Carrie-Anne Moss? She really fell off. She fell into the Matrix. That's what happened to her. She's trapped.
Maybe she just didn't want to be an actor anymore. I mean, she probably made so much money off the Matrix.
Probably.
I don't know.
But hey, listen, I mean, Keanu Reeves
theater.
probably made a shitload of money off the Matrix, and he's still making John Wick.
Yeah. That's true.
Can't besmirch anybody. Rena, you and I have been circling doing this podcast for a long time. We were in Edinburgh together last summer. R.I.P. Edinburgh Fringe. Yes. Never to happen ever again. And
oh God, you think never?
No, I think it'll happen again. It's just not this year.
Yeah,
but
in several decades.
Yes. So we were in Edinburgh together, and I recorded some episodes while I was out there, and I wanted to have you on, and then we couldn't make it happen. We were just too busy. Edinburgh is a colossal clusterfuck of just busyness and doing shit all the time.
Yeah, it's insane.
And now that we have ample free time on our hands, I figured it was the perfect time to reach out to you and have you on, because the movie you wanted to talk to me about, I also didn't realize is one of the longest movies that I've ever watched.
How long? It was like 3 hours.
Almost 3 hours. It's about 2:45. And it is the Academy Award winning David Fincher directed, Brad Pitt starring, Curious Case Benjamin Button.
Wait, what did it win an Academy Award for?
Well, it was nominated for 13 Academy Awards, and it won the Academy Awards for... Oh, yeah, this was the year... You know how every year there's always a movie that gets nominated for, like, a boatload of Oscars? And then maybe it wins a couple of them? This was that one for 2006.
Oh,
or
my
2000,
God.
Sorry, 2008. Excuse me. I got it wrong. I'm thinking because Katrina happened in 2006... And there's a whole frame narrative adding on talking about Hurricane Katrina in this movie for no reason that I just got mixed up.
For no reason. It makes no sense.
Makes no sense. Yeah, this movie was nominated for Best Picture, Best Actor, Best Supporting Actress, Best Directing, Best Adapted Screenplay, Best Cinematography, Best Editing, Best Costume Design, Best Original Score, Best Art Direction, Best Makeup, Best Visual Effects, Best Sound Mixing.
Okay, to be fair, the score is really good.
It didn't win for score.
I know, but what did it win for?
It won for art direction, makeup, and visual effects.
What were because of the old baby?
Because of the old baby.
Oh, and the submarine scene. That was kind of cool.
They put Brad Pitt's old ass head on a little boy's body, and that's how it won.
That was the scariest looking baby. Like, I literally lost my appetite looking at that baby. Like, the father was about to throw. When the father was about to throw the baby in the river and the cop caught him, I was like, just show the cop the baby. The cop will understand.
That thing was uglier than the Eraserhead baby. This baby's horrifying.
It's scary. It looked like, in Midsummer when it's just people's skin. It looked like that. It was horrible.
Now, Rena, I had never seen this movie before you brought it to my attention, and I want to know why you wanted to talk about this movie in the first place. What was your experience like watching Benjamin Button? Did you always hate it? Did you come to hate it?
I always thought it was dumb. And I feel bad shit talking a movie because obviously I haven't made any movies. So this is still a better movie than I can make. I just want to say that. But
don't give yourself more credit. I think you can make a better movie than Benjamin Button.
Well,
do you want to make a middle of the road fantasy rom-com drama? No, you're better than that.
I don't know. I'd be okay with that. I mean, it got nominated. A movie that gets nominated, I don't know. I could see why it got nominated for Academy Awards because they threw in a lot of American themes into it that I feel like it like tricks people. Like they even named her Daisy, which is like straight out of what's that book called? You know, The Green Light and then The Mist.
Great Gatsby.
The Great Gatsby.
Well, they're written by the same.
Yeah, and she dances to a.
F. Scott Fitzgerald wrote the short story that this was based on. And he wrote Great Gatsby,
okay.
Yeah.
Oh, so that makes sense that they called her Daisy then. Mm-hmm. See, this makes sense to me as a short story. Like I think it makes sense. And the thing is, the fact that it was a short story and they made it 3 hours is insane to me. Like,
yeah,
this was not a short story in the movie, but it did it. I could see this being a cute short story to read. It never should have been stretched into something longer. Because it just doesn't have the substance. I mean, you can tell because of how hard they keep hitting the theme in such obvious ways.
Right.
Like, this is about time. There's a clock. Like,
the clock runs backwards.
Substance. Backwards. But they really, I could see how they played on the heartstrings of Americans, bringing up both wars, naming her Daisy, having her dance to a song from Carousel. Like, it's just like, I don't know.
Is that what she dances to?
Yeah, she dances to the song "If I Loved You" from Carousel.
Okay,
which is
I feel like you think Americans know more about musical theater than they actually do, Rena.
They don't consciously, but I think subliminally, like you can pick up on something that's such a, I don't know, it's like a classic.
So, when did you see this movie for the first time?
I think around the time it came out.
Okay.
I don't remember. When it was 2008 it came out?
2008, yeah. Award season.
Yeah, so probably around then.
Okay.
Yeah. And you saw it for the first time now?
Yeah, I saw it for the first time yesterday.
I mean, I think it's easier to think it's dumb now. Like, you know, like things age badly and then it's like easier to see it. Like when Juno first came out, I liked it.
Here's the thing with Curious Case of Benjamin Button that I noticed. It's it's obviously it's crazy long. It's way too long. The story that it tells can be told in such a shorter amount of time. I mean, there's a reason why this is a short story to begin with.
Yeah.
And not something long. It's
bare bones.
It's bare bones, and it should have stayed bare bones. There's a lot of unnecessary stuff cluttering this movie up. You don't need any of the. There's so much about the guy's life that they could have made into an interesting story on its own, without having to add this weird Hurricane Katrina frame narrative.
Yeah, the Titanic framing.
Yep, you don't need that wraparound.
Yeah,
and then you
Memory
also.
Play. Yeah.
Don't need to spend so much time. You got to kind of pick a lane. Like, you either do a biography of the dude's life, or you make the romantic stuff the core of the movie. And this movie's doing it both ways.
Yes.
There's just not enough to get us narratively, to get us to care about this entire story happening in this one movie for that to work.
I agree. They were trying to make it The Notebook, but it was like too many. It's like a hat on a hat. Too many hats on the hat.
Yeah, there's too many hats.
And the Katrina thing is just like completely different whole other issue that has nothing to do with like the whole theme of the movie. So it's just, they just keep saying storm is coming, like as if that'll make it make sense, you know?
There's more rain coming now. You got to be careful.
Yeah.
Also, the accents in this movie. Let's talk about how bad the accents are.
Oh my God. Yeah. Like Cate Blanchett can't do. I mean, I think Cate Blanchett's great, but I think it's really difficult.
This is the worst I've ever seen her in a movie.
She photographs so well.
Yeah.
So they both look great.
It's such a beautiful pile of garbage, this movie.
Yeah. That's the thing. It's so pretty. It's so pretty, and the sound, like I said, the score, it's like if you took out the score, it would just be so much harder to watch this movie.
Mm-hmm. It's really interesting to me to know that this movie was directed also by David Fincher, who, before making this movie, I mean, Fincher was a well-known, well-regarded director for sure. You know, he'd made a lot of music videos, and he did Alien and Seven. He did Fight Club. He did Zodiac before this. He did a couple other ones too. But he made movies that, you know, a very specific style of movie. He's making thrillers. He's making stuff that's dark and violent. And then Curious Case of Benjamin Button comes along and takes a total left turn. And proves that David Fincher is a very skilled director. The movie is beautiful. It's laid out well. But there's just a lot of stuff in here that, unfortunately, makes the movie feel like dead weight.
I think it's the combination of taking something really fantastical and then mapping it over real stuff that makes it feel like it's a bit of a mockery.
Yeah. It does feel kind of like the most baseline version of what a romantic drama should look like. Like, it takes The Notebook, which is, I know a lot of people consider The Notebook among the pinnacle of like romantic dramas and what they're capable of. This movie takes that, but then also tries to just shove in a bunch of other Americana stuff and just be like, well, we can fit all of this into the movie too. Why not?
They tried to make it, Forrest Gump meets The Notebook or something. Plus, he ages backwards.
That's probably how they pitched it when they were trying to sell this movie. It's Forrest Gump meets The Notebook.
Yeah, that's what it feels like they were going for. And like America's Everyman.
I'd be interested to see, I want to see the trailer because I feel like that's probably how they marketed the movie too. Like I was probably 18. I was in high school when this movie came out, and I don't remember seeing any trailers for it. It didn't interest me.
Yeah.
And so I really don't remember what the marketing of it was like, other than like, oh, okay, yeah, this is the movie about the old guy. So
I think I just heard it was like about a guy that ages backwards. Yeah. I mean, like, I remember knowing the log line, but I don't remember seeing a trailer. All right, let's watch it.
My name is Benjamin Button, and I was born under unusual circumstances. While everybody else was aging, I was getting younger, all alone.
Yep. Let's show an old man walking.
It's like a Peter Pan vibe.
Yeah.
This music wasn't in the movie.
No, this music came from somewhere else.
It looks like Peter Pan-y.
What's this? Oh my God. I actually know what this song is called, but I forget where it's been.
What is it?
It's that classic. It's been in a lot of like movies and trailers.
It sounds almost like a Russian folk song, honestly.
Yeah, this is some God, what's the guy's name?
Also, Julia Ormond. That's her name, right? The daughter?
Yes.
Is it Julia Ormond? Yeah, she also just this. She cannot not seem European to me. She just does not read American at all.
Yeah. So that movie trailer made it look like
it makes it look. What? Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say it makes it look like it's a fairy tale, and you can't really get a beat on it.
Yeah, that made it look more appealing than what it was. Like, and that's what I mean. It's like it should have been said in some. I don't know how I would have done it differently, really. But I guess like Peter Pan, for example, exists outside of like real circumstances of the decades. It's just kind of like a timeless evergreen thing. I think I would have preferred they took out the Forrest Gump element.
Yeah, I don't think you need that. You don't need the sequences of him fighting in the wars. You don't need the sequences of him of them like watching. I mean, it's so simple, but just them like on the couch together, like watching the Beatles. I don't need that.
Well, it's interesting because it's like the initial setup of the short story. I bet the short story is so good because like the setup of the cloth of it being that the men will you can turn back time and the men from the Great War will come back and live lives is like it's such a beautiful concept, and I could see how that could carry kind of like this little folk tale of this dream world of what could have been. But the thing is, like, you don't address where that comes from, which is the fact that this is all a fantasy to bring people back to life. It's like I almost would have liked F. Scott's perspective rather than the older woman and putting it in reality. Like, I would want to see the fact that it's a fantasy broken, and deal with the reality of where that fantasy is coming from. And then it would have, like, more depth to it.
And this is the other thing, too, is so in the frame narrative of Katrina that's happening, the story is told as like, read me from Benjamin Button's diary. I want to hear his thoughts. And it's a really shitty way of just allowing Brad Pitt to do voiceover and narrate the entire story. And then you have big plot elements come up like, oh, guess what? He's actually your dad. Uh-oh, surprise. Benjamin Button
it's
real.
Bringing it into real life that makes it a mockery of the reality from whence it was born. Because then it's just some real freakish thing that happened.
Right. I would much rather
no bearing on the sentiment. Like,
yeah, if you take away the folk tale element of it, like it detracts, and I'm so glad you said folktale. That's a great way to describe what this is. At its core, it's a story that you would tell somebody else, like a Paul Bunyan or Johnny Appleseed or John Henry.
Yes, exactly. And it's like, if you don't address where the larger than life elements come from, then you have to, in my opinion, set it in a fantasy world. Like it's like in Marvel movies, like it's fine because it's this other city that's similar to an American city. So you don't need to address the fact that it's like us all wanting to be larger than life and have powers that we'll never have,
Right.
Like the sad truth of where that comes from.
This is one of the most interesting things about the history of this movie too. I'm not sure how much you read up on like the development of the movie at all, or what you're aware of that process.
Zero.
So originally, it seems like this was going to be a much more fantasy-focused story based on the list of people who they tried to have direct and work on the movie previously. Frank Oz and Martin Short were the original director and star. So already you've got somebody who's heavily involved in Muppets and Fantasy World, Dark Crystal, Labyrinth he directed. So he's originally, that's the baseline. That's who we're starting out with.
Okay.
Then that's in the mid 1980s. Then in 1991, Steven Spielberg options the movie.
They tried to make it for 20 years?
Yeah, this movie's been in development for a long time. Steven Spielberg options it in 91 with Tom Cruise attached to lead.
Whoa, that would have been different.
Then he leaves to go direct Jurassic Park. Then they take
Tom Cruise was in a movie like this. What is it? Born on the 4th of July was kind of like his Forrest Gumpian. Anyway, carry on.
Yes. And then you get Kathleen Kennedy and Frank Marshall took the movie to Paramount. It was originally after that when Kathleen Kennedy and Frank Marshall got their hands on it. Ron Howard was supposed to direct, and John Travolta was going to star in it.
Oh,
so it's a little weird. That's a bit of a weird one. Then the last and most obvious one. Oh, actually, I guess there's a couple more. Spike Jonze was supposed to direct it.
Oh shit!
After being John Malkovich. And adaptation, I believe.
That would have been cool.
I know, and Charlie Kaufman wrote a draft of the screenplay for that version, too. So you can imagine seeing all these narratives by people who tell fantasy stories, even fantastical stories set in a more realistic world like being John Malkovich. It would have been so much more interesting, I think, to lean into that and to the folk-tailiness of it instead of trying to make it this crazy Forrest Gump meets The Notebook.
I mean, it seems like they tried in terms of making the memories in that weird filmic way. Like he tried a little bit to make it storyteller-y. I think honestly, it's more in the script that it was never addressed, the break between when it's real and when it's fantasy. Like,
right.
I mean,
just
not that, like break. I said, I have not written a better movie that's been produced, so I can't really shit on that. It's like I understand the structure and why it's structured that way, but it's like it doesn't. I don't know. It doesn't lend itself to the depth that could have been there. I don't know. In terms of making him the actual father, or like that it just made it too real.
Mm-hmm.
That it's like you have like the modern day people during Katrina being more concerned with this guy who aged backwards.
Right.
Than Katrina. They're even like, do you want to move? And she's like, no, we're staying here. Whatever.
Yeah.
Fuck Katrina.
And they even have these sequences when you're telling the story and Brad Pitt's getting to the end of his life. And you have scenes like you got to force in the scene of, this is where he meets his daughter when she's older. And then Cate Blanchett goes and fucks young Brad Pitt in a hotel.
Yeah.
And you have this weird moment that, like, we don't need to see all the family stuff. If you want to go for the love story and have it be this fantastical love story, go for that. You don't need to have all these extra trappings in there just to pad out your frame narrative.
Well, and it also just detracts, like I said, from the fantasy elements of it.
Mm-hmm. But the other thing is the fantasy elements of it are so weird and creepy too that I almost don't even want to see that version of it. Until I
don't know.
It's hard to say. I can't really, because there's a lot of stuff that I laughed at and it's entertaining, but it's not like it doesn't fit what the movie as it stands is trying to be.
Right.
Like,
that's the thing. It's just one of those concepts that's like a really great pitch, but when you think about how to actually do it, it just kind of falls like sand through your fingers because it's like it really only works as a short story.
Yeah, because then as a short story, you don't have this whole grand thing at the very end of the whole movie. That montage. There's this montage that happens. Sorry, I forgot you just said you didn't get a chance to actually like finish the final bits.
No, I got to the part where he has zits and then.
Okay, so there's a montage at the very, very end of the movie where it shows all of the characters like Jared Harris and Tilda Swinton and literally everybody that he's met over the course of his life. And it's like, sometimes people can be a father, they can love Shakespeare, and he can be an artist, and maybe they're a dancer, and maybe they're a person who likes to swim, and maybe they're a
they're
dwarf.
just piling on everything.
And it just shows like one cut of each person, like it's a fucking insurance commercial. And it's like, sometimes this person is on the front lines, and sometimes they're a war hero, and sometimes they're a doctor.
Kind of like the end of the Breakfast Club.
Yeah.
Because inside of us is a jock, a cheerleader,
a basket case.
Yeah.
And it shows that, and it's like, well, then if the message of the movie the whole time is that sometimes you can just be yourself? Did you need to take
that has nothing to do with time.
And it has nothing to do with the entire rest of the movie. Did you need someone to age backward? Yeah, exactly.
I mean, the message really is like, we all want to turn time backwards, but we can't, I think, is the message of the short story, having not read it.
Right.
But I think it's got to be that the men from war are never actually coming back, but wouldn't it be nice?
And and a lot of the stories that are told in the movie of like Tilda Swinton and Brad Pitt having their weird affair, and Brad Pitt and Jared Harris having their time on the boat, there's a lot of stuff in there that's like coulda, woulda, shoulda, turn back time, we can do this other thing.
Right. Like we're getting hit by the car.
Mm-hmm. But all the messaging gets too muddled. There's too much message trying to be told in this movie. God, there's so many problems. That's the problem with a really long movie, is that there's a lot of ways that problems can creep in to the storytelling.
They just threw in everything that could move someone into one movie. And it just gets muddled. And it's weird to me that they ended it that way, given that they were hammering the time thing in so hard.
Yeah.
And then at the end, they're like, this has nothing to do with time.
This one, it's not about time all along. It's been about individuality.
It's about, you can be whoever you are, because you're American.
It's just like
American themology. Yeah.
You know how
America.
I think... I would love to see, there's this one sequence that is the most, I mean, we talked about how creepy this baby was and how weird these visual effects were, seeing Brad Pitt's old man head on young people's bodies. And one of the best scenes that I think epitomizes that too is the brothel scene.
Yes, so creepy.
So, to set up what happens here, there's this guy played by Jared Harris. He's a boat captain. And
he was good.
He was good. I like Jared Harris. Jared Harris is a good actor.
Him. He did a great job.
And he brings, he's calling out at like the docks in New Orleans, hey, I need somebody to come work for me for a day. And so young Brad Pitt, who's old Brad Pitt, volunteers. And they spend a lot of time talking on the ship about like, can you get boners? And have you ever been with a woman?
Yeah, there's a lot in the thing about boners.
Yeah.
Like, it's like the old lady's like, read me more about the boner before I die.
Brad Pitt's like, I guess I get a boner every once in a while. Oh, and also they're still doing this weird like Lollipop Guild voice change to Brad Pitt at this point too. Oh, so he doesn't have really this regular voice. He's got kind of this weird voice where he's talking like this, but he doesn't know what a boner is. And sometimes I guess I get one. I never fucked a lady before. And Jared Harris's character, the captain, takes him to this brothel so he can go fuck a lady for the first time. And we have this wonderful scene that we're going to watch now, which is so weird. And so
also
strange.
His dad sees him at the brothel. But anyway.
Yep.
Oh, God, so creepy.
How are you tonight, Grandpa?
There's the brave young soul who's going to fuck an old man. But guess what? He's actually a teenager. That's why he's got all the stamina.
What are you, Dick Tracy or something? I've got some rest.
Again.
I don't get the Dick Tracy reference.
No, thank you. You have a nice night.
Will you be here tomorrow?
I don't get it either.
It sure made me understand the value
Does
of
Dick Tracy always go hard?
I guess.
And then he bumps into his dad.
I guess Dick Tracy liked to fuck. Yeah, then he bumps into his dad.
And his dad's like, oh, I found my son at the brothel.
My son was fucking the same lady I probably did, just not even an hour ago. And by golly, then his... Sorry, go ahead.
What? No, go ahead. What?
I was going to say, then his dad goes and gets him drunk.
Yeah.
Knowing that his son's a teenager and just fucked a lady in a brothel for hours.
Well, it was a different time. I mean, by the time someone was a teenager in those days, they were like working full time, providing for their family.
This is a movie about time.
The time before unions had all of the power.
A time when you could take a young old man into any building they wanted to and say, hey, you can do that.
You know what occurred to me, though?
What's that?
Like, why they wouldn't be able to keep the themology of the original short story is that they would have had to say, in a way, that war isn't worth it.
Oh, yeah, you can't make a movie that says war isn't worth it.
Not here. Not that it'll be nominated for Academy Awards. I mean, yes, no, you can't. You could have. I don't think you could have in 2008, if that makes sense.
Oh, yeah, 2008, absolutely not. I mean, the movie that won, well, actually, I mean, I guess you can show a movie that says war is worth it, but the elements of war aren't. Like, because The Hurt Locker is what won the Academy Award that year. But The Hurt Locker's about one man who wants to go to war too much.
That's different.
It's different.
But you couldn't say overall the cost of all those men isn't worth it, and wouldn't it be great if we could just bring them all back? I think it would have been too touchy right then.
Right. Instead, you got to go for the patriotic
zooming
movie.
back to 2008.
You got to go for the patriotic movie where there's a guy who's like, I love going to war. I'm Jeremy Renner.
I mean, I feel like after World War II, I don't know. I mean, for sure, Vietnam, you could say that maybe it wasn't worth it. But you couldn't be like, I don't know.
I mean, at the time, you definitely couldn't say that Iraq and Afghanistan weren't worth it. At that time, for sure, you couldn't say that.
Yeah. So I think it's like, it was a kind of and even now, I don't know if you could really say that.
I think you could now.
It would be very touchy. You could say it, but I don't think you'd be nominated for a bunch of awards.
Well, I know not. Well, that's the thing is like, yeah, because 1917 is a movie that's like sort of anti-war, but like a very Hollywood version of anti-war, and that got nominated for a bunch of Oscars and stuff. But it's also like, it's showing the beauty of war while showing the horrors of war, quote unquote.
Right.
It's weird.
I mean,
it's
I think
weird
shit.
Full
Metal Jacket does it, and it does it well, and it does it enough time after the whole thing is over, and once everybody was in agreement that particular war wasn't ideal.
That one specific.
That one, only Vietnam.
Only Vietnam.
Nobody talks about Korea.
Right.
Only Vietnam that's the only one you're really allowed to like shit talk in a way of saying it wasn't worth it.
Mm-hmm. Man, I can't wait till we get shit talking war movies about Iraq and Afghanistan. That's going to be good.
That's going to be, it's a real tragedy. But I don't know. I mean, the main thing that needs to be made is the comedy of errors of all those lies justifying it. Like
that's what have you ever seen, and this is a perfect time for us to talk about recommendations people should watch instead of Benjamin Button. Have you ever seen In the Loop?
No.
That's a movie that you should definitely watch. In the Loop, if you like a comedy of errors and you like somebody talking and yelling about stuff and doing things, bumbling around, comedy of errors, In the Loop is the perfect one for it. It's written by Armando Iannucci and directed by him, and this is made right before he made Veep. It's great. And it's so funny.
Benjamin Button could have been made. I mean, it would have been dark, but as like kind of a slapstick comedy.
Oh, I would have loved to see the slapstick comedy version of Benjamin Button.
Yeah. That might have played better.
Even like, I would even take like a rom-com-y Judd Apatow-esque version of Benjamin Button.
Yes, divorced from like political happenings. Yeah.
Yeah. Man.
Yes. No Hurricane Katrina.
Yeah, I don't need movie. Katrina. Not in this movie.
If Katrina's in a movie, the movie should be about Katrina.
Yeah, Katrina should be the side plot.
It's not a side thing. It's huge.
So, Rena, what do you think people should watch instead of Benjamin Button? Especially because it's 3.5 hours, almost 3.5. It's too. I don't even care. It's too long. What should people watch that's shorter and better than Benjamin Button?
It's so long. Well, you know what movie I like that I just thought of when I was talking shit about all the politicians is if you haven't seen the movie Vice, I would recommend that movie.
Yeah, Vice is fun.
Have you seen it?
Yeah, I've seen it.
Vice was good. I don't know, because I actually do have bad taste in movies and TV, which is why it surprised me that I didn't like this movie. I don't know, something recent. I'm trying to think. Like, I usually watch just like old stuff. I mean, my favorite movie is Harold and Maude. If you haven't seen that, that's a great movie.
Oh, I've never seen Harold and Maude.
You haven't?
No, couldn't you tell by the way I just put a weird emphasis on saying the name of the movie?
Harold and Maude.
Harold and Maude.
I watched it just before lockdown. I saw it at Tarantino's theater there.
Oh, yeah, the new Bev.
What's it called? Yeah, and it was so great.
Yeah.
It's really one of the best movies ever made, in my opinion.
I got to check it out. I'm going to look it up.
It's so good. So good.
Well,
yeah.
I'll have to look that up, but thanks for coming on today, Rena. This is a really great episode.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Where can the listeners find you? Besides, of course, we play stuff with Nuisance every Tuesday at the Pack Theater's Twitch channel, even though the Pack is still currently MIA in terms of being able to open.
Yeah.
Still there every Twitch. Tuesday at 8 o'clock, twitch.tv/Pack Theater. You can watch us play games.
Yes, you could just follow me on social media, Instagram, Twitter. It's just my full name, so at Rena Hundert. On both of them, it's the same thing.
And you can find me at Diet J on Twitter and Instagram, jlightcomedy.com. Why am I saying for show dates? I got really in my old ways there. There's no shows.
Well, there's Zoom shows.
There are Zoom shows. There is the Pack Twitch channel where I do eBay Power Selling 101 with Michael DeWitt on Wednesday nights. And if you like the podcast, subscribe, tell a friend, subscribe to Patreon, patreon.com/blockbusting. You can join at the $2, $5, or $10 a month levels. Get some fun goodies, movie related and otherwise. And yeah, that's about it. Thanks for coming on, Rena.
All right. Thanks for having me.
This has been Blockbusting. Go see something good for a change.